we're in business. All right. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to open up this spreadsheet. What the hell? Okay. All right. So who wants to read for me? Is there a way to hide this? There we go. Zoom in a little bit. We're going to look at average weight, average price, and for now, we're going to ignore any of these different classifications. Okay. So if they don't have a classification out here, that's what I'm going to call typical. Okay. So someone start reading these average weights for me. We're skipping any that have these classifications up to the side. So 384, okay, 428, 479, 525, 55, 525, 582, 629, 683, 720, 782, 825, 871. Okay. Now for those groups of animals, start reading me the average price. 583.74, 555.89, 523.05, 498.74. Okay, what else? $372.12, 358.42, okay. All right. So as body weight increases, dollars per hundredweight is doing what? Going down. What else do you know? So this black line is the regression. So it's the smoothed fit across that for that dollar per hundredweight across that weight range. What do you notice about the points around that line? They're pretty close. Some are above it, some are below it. So ones that are below the line could be a bargain, right? Some that are above the line are worth, or they were bought for more money than what the average for those, what that average should have been, right? So you can see that here. If you bought this group 582 for $449.60, you got a $15.94 per hundredweight discount relative to the group. So you're probably starting out pretty good. Okay. All right. Let's do heifers. So heifers, medium and large ones. Okay. 343, 375, 434, 476, 539, 568, 636, 673, 723, 775, 815, 863. Actual price, 545, or no, average price, excuse me, 489.61. Okay. 460.59. Point what? 93. Uh, 344 point what? 53. Fat fingered that one. 863 is 316.93. Okay. So similar thing for heifers. As animals get heavier, dollars per hundredweight gets less, so it goes down. Okay. What do you notice about this group here? Way above the regression line. Don't know what happened. Wasn't there at the sale barn that day. They probably way overpaid for this group of cattle. Okay. Compared to these other ones, which are all below the regression line, so they probably got a decent discount for those groups of cattle. Maybe there was a reason that the person who's recording these uh, uh, into this sheet, maybe they should have been classified as fancy or something, but they weren't. I don't know. But if we look at this group of animal was overbought. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we can look at this. This is dollar per hundredweight for steers, dollar per hundredweight versus heifers. So it's exactly like we saw with the historical trend. Steers are more valuable than heifers. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. What's some other things that we notice about, so like unweaned versus this group here that's typical? So average weight was 520 versus, no, that's average price. Average weight was 323 versus 315. And look at the average price. So they received a substantial discount compared to this group. And even this group here that's 60 pounds heavier received more dollars per hundredweight than this unweaned group. So unweaned cattle are receiving a discount relative to typical cattle. Why might that be? Higher risk. Chances are they're going to have more morbidity, so they're going to get sick, more sickness, they're going to have more medical costs, and greater mortality. So you're going to have more animals die. Okay? All right. When the cattle buyers are in this auction market placing bids, okay, do they know what that classification is going to be per se? Not really. They don't typically make a, declaration of these cattle came off the truck unweaned. They're using their judgment based off their visual cues whether that group of cattle was unweaned or mismanaged or not. Does that make sense? Okay. How are we doing on time? 10:30. Class ends at 11:20. Okay. Are you guys enjoying this? Or you want me to get back to just lecturing? Okay. All right. Let's look at a couple of different comparisons. Just going to paste those numbers there. Oh, I want to do that here. Okay. I want it this way. Of course it's not working. So why would it? Oh, I have the same thing pasted in here. Okay. All right, so this shows the value of those animals as body weight increases. So it's, again, steers are more valuable on a dollar per head basis than heifers. Okay. So this plots the value of steers, the dollar per hundredweight of the average based off of the regression line fit here for steers. So this is the additional value or additional cost to purchase another hundredweight. So 300 versus 400. That makes sense? Okay. So it would cost 79 more dollars to purchase a 400 weight animal than a 300 weight animal based off of this average report from these sale barn, this auction market. Okay. This is the value of heifers, dollar per hundredweight for the average based off this regression line group of heifers. This would be the additional cost in dollars per hundredweight. And then this is basically steers, dollar per hundredweight for steers minus dollar per hundredweight for heifers. So it's showing you the premium that steers are bringing relative to heifers. Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Do I need to go through that again? Does that make sense? You guys following this? Any questions? Okay. So on this day, a 300-pound steer brought $106 per hundredweight, so $1.06 per pound more than a 300-pound heifer. Okay. Now that premium for steers relative to heifers decreases as cattle gets heavier. This is pretty typical. I've done this with a lot of different reports from mainly Oklahoma City National Stockyards, but this is pretty typical. Okay. So this plots that premium in dollars per hundredweight over weight. Okay. So just like you would see here in these raw numbers, as the animals get heavier, that premium for steers versus heifers goes down. Okay. That makes sense? That took 6 minutes. Should we try another one? Okay. Usually I will look at, we can do steers versus bulls. So if I go here, all right, now we're going to scroll to the bottom. Here we have, well, they only sold 5 groups of bulls on this day. 3 of those groups were unweaned. Let's see. We'll use some of these unweaned ones. Okay. I won't use this one because this one's going to be a huge outlier. But we'll do 368, 461, 518, 591. It's going to be a little exaggerated because I'm including some of these unweaned prices. Okay. So that's 590, 67.5, 400. Okay. Let me make this bigger. We're going to zoom in. Okay. What do you notice about this line compared to the steers? So at real light body weights under 400 pounds, it's not that far off of what a steer would bring. Okay. As that animal gets bigger, the difference between steers and bulls gets bigger. This is pretty typical of what you're going to see every day. Okay. Okay. So if we look at this premium, okay, you have a period at heavy or real light body weights where the increase in that premium for steers versus bulls is going to increase real rapidly. And then it's going to start plateauing out. Okay. So at heavier body weights, they're bringing about $50 per hundredweight more steers are compared to bulls. It's all because of as that animal gets heavier, okay, their response to being castrated is going to be greater. So they're going to have much greater stress, much worse average daily gain, way worse feed to gain, way more morbidity, mortality, and therefore their cost of gain for bulls is going to be higher than it will be for those steers. We're going to go into that in much greater depth, I think, next week. Okay, the consequence of poor prior management. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions so far? So you can do this comparison with any, like you can compare typical versus unweaned. You can compare typical versus fleshy. You can compare typical versus fancy. Okay. So you can look at this and look at the premium that these animals are bringing relative to each other using this approach. Okay. In lab next Monday, which will be on Zoom because I'm going to be in Nashville. Okay. I'm going to take a break from the Music City to hop on a Zoom call with you guys. So we'll go over this, go back over how to use this program, and then you guys are going to go look up some auction market reports for yourself. You're going to compare steers versus bulls. You're going to compare maybe heifers versus steers, fancy versus typical, and then compare a Oklahoma City National Stockyards versus whatever stockyard of choice in the Southeast. Okay, and look at the premiums versus discounts of different groups of animals. Make sense? Okay. Any questions? No questions. All make sense? Okay. All right. So back to the lecture. Cattle margin. Okay. So cattle margin is the difference in purchase price versus sell price. Okay. So for example, if I bought a 500-pound steer for $210 per hundredweight, and then I sold an 800-pound steer for $160 per hundredweight, my cattle margin would be $250 per head. Okay. What could that indicate? Cattle margin relates to potential profit. Okay. So if my total operating costs is less than $250 per head, I've made money. That makes sense? These prices are unrealistic, as you guys saw from that auction market report. Okay. Yeah. So it determines profit potential. So the cattle margin would be your profit if you had zero cost of gain. Okay. Remember, cost of gain does not include purchase price of the animal. It's just operating costs. Make sense? Any questions? So value of gain is most analogous to cattle margin. Okay. So this graph here shows the weight gain that's needed to be the amount of weight that you need to put on an animal to recover purchase cost. Okay. So and this is for a 500-pound animal. Okay. Here I have sell price in dollars per hundredweight. So what I would sell that animal as. Here on this, what would that be? Axis? I don't know. Column. I've got purchase price. Okay. So what I bought that animal for. Okay. So if I bought that animal for $100 per hundredweight and I sold that animal for $100 per hundredweight, that animal would need to gain $0 to recover its purchase cost. Okay. If I bought that animal for $110 per hundredweight and I sold it at $100 per hundredweight, I would have needed to add 50 pounds of gain to that animal to recoup my purchase price. Does that make sense? Okay. As purchase price increases and I'm holding sell price constant, the more weight I would need to add to that animal to recoup my sell price. You guys follow? Okay. Within a purchase price, as my sell price increases, the amount of weight I would need to add to that animal to recoup purchase price decreases. Okay. So if I bought this animal for $120 per hundredweight, okay, I sold it for 110, I would only need to add 45 pounds to that animal to recoup my purchase price. That make sense? Okay. So value of gain. Know this. I can promise you I will have different weights of animals and different values of animals and tell you to calculate the value of gain for a given scenario. Okay? So value of gain is sale weight times sale price minus purchase weight times purchase price divided by total weight gained. Questions? So if I give you a sale weight and a sale price, purchase weight and purchase price, you can calculate total weight gain because I gave you sale weight and purchase price, all right? You can calculate the value of gain. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Here's an example. Basically the same one we used before. If I were to purchase a 200 or 500 pound steer for $210 per hundredweight versus an 800 pound steer, so I'm going to sell an 800 pound steer at $160 per hundredweight. Plug that in. 800 minus 500 is 300, so that's 300 weights gained. Okay. 8 times 160 minus 5 times 210 divided by 3. The value of gain was $76.67 per hundredweight. Okay. Any questions? So typically, as long as my value of gain is greater than my cost of gain, it makes sense to continue to feed them, continue to grow them. Okay? All right, cost of gain. Cost of gain is the amount of money it cost per unit of gain, right? Not including purchase cost of the animals. That's very important. Okay, so value of gain could be still greater than cost of gain, but your purchase price could be so high that you could still lose money. Okay, but that's sunk capital into those animals that you bought, so it still makes sense to continue to feed those animals because the amount of money that you lose is going to decrease. Any questions? Okay. So cost of gain is influenced by these costs: transportation, the cost to get the animals from the sale barn, auction market to you, shrinkage, so your purchase weight, right, versus what that animal actually weighed when it arrived at the feed yard. Okay, if you have an animal on a truck for 16 hours that hasn't eaten or drinking water, it's going to lose weight, right? Medicine, so that includes initial processing and any medicine used for treating that animal. Death loss, feed. Feed costs are typically the largest cost. They represent the largest percent of cost of gain relative to all other costs, usually around 70% of your cost of gain. Interest. So interest is a huge thing. The cost of getting capital, right, is huge. So in 2020, when interest rates were 3%, your cost of gain was lower than in today when interest rates are 6.5%. Something out of our control. and then yardage. So yardage is a flat rate that feed yards charge, typically in dollars per head. And it's usually somewhere between 0 and 50 cents per head. There's a wide range in what feed yards will charge in yardage because maybe they aren't charging yardage, but they're charging more markup on feed. Does that make sense? Okay. I misspelled typical there. Don't judge me. Okay, feeding margin. So feeding margin is your selling price minus your cost of gain. So this is not necessarily cost of gain in dollars per hundredweight, but the total cost, your total operating costs, not including purchase price. Okay? So what would feeding margin be an indication of? If that cost is not including purchase price. No, we're talking about like dollars, right? Not necessarily like pounds or weight gain. So a feeding margin would be an indication of how much money you can spend on a group of animal and still make money, right? Yeah. So if your selling price is greater than your cost of gain, right? You make money as long as your purchase price of those animals is lower than that difference. Does that make sense? Okay. Break-even selling price. Okay. So this is the price that I need to sell that animal at to make $0 profit or loss, right? So it's the point where I break even. I haven't gained any money, haven't lost any money. Okay. So it is total costs. So purchase costs plus your operating costs divided by your sell weight. Okay. Which you can calculate sell weight based off purchase weight plus average daily gain. So many pounds per day that that animal is putting on times the number of days that you have them. Does that make sense? So if I give you a purchase price, give you a scenario where you have 150 days, and over that 150 days, they're putting on 2 pounds of body weight per day. So purchase weight plus 300, 150 times 2, right, would be your sell weight. Does that make sense? Everybody understands what I'm saying when I say average daily gain? Okay. All right. I think I've got 30 minutes left. We're cruising. So any questions? Okay. Pretty simple. The math's pretty simple. Don't memorize any equations. I'm going to give them to you. Know how to take what values go into which equations. Know how to implement them. Okay? Okay. All right. You will have a question just like what I'm outlining here on your exam. Okay? So for this new past software example, I'll give you a printout of that software. It'll have all these values already put in. Some values will have a black box over them or be missing, and you'll have to fill them in using calculations. Okay? All right. So for this example, for this scenario, we're purchasing a 600-pound steer at $322.81 per hundredweight. Okay? We're going to put them on pasture for 150 days. We are renting that pasture for 70 cents per pound of gain. Pretty typical for a wheat pasture lease agreement. Typically, they're gonna price that based off so many dollars per pound of gain. Okay. You could also do head days, so many dollars per head per day. Okay. But for stocker cattle, it's more typical to do it based off average daily gain. Okay, we expect them to gain 2.4 pounds per day, not outside the realm of possibility in a wheat pasture scenario. We're going to use 33% of our own money to purchase these animals. We're going to borrow the rest. Okay. We expect that we can sell them at 960 pounds for $256 per hundredweight. Okay. So 2.4 times 150 plus 600. I hope it equals 960. Okay. So other costs, other things to include, we have an 8% interest rate. This interest rate is based off a 360-day banker's year. Okay, so how many days are in a year? 365. Why would I use 360 instead of 365? What's that? Good guess. It just assigns 30 days per month. Before bankers had computers, operating off of 360 days was a lot easier than 365, and it gets you close enough. Okay. Some banks will use 365. I think it's still pretty typical to do 360. Okay. 70 cents per pound of gain is our pasture cost. So we have $8.30 per head in BRD treatment costs. These animals got sick. That's based off 50% of the animals had to be treated once, 25% were treated twice, 12.5% were treated 3 times. I pulled these numbers out of thin air. Okay. We had $20 per head for other receiving drugs, so dewormer, vaccinations, implants, what have you. All right, we have 1.5% death loss. We're going to assume 13 cents per head per day in labor costs. So that could be me bringing out feed to supplement them, me going out and checking on them, going out there pulling cattle and treating sickness. Okay. So there's the assumption broken down there. Always have to pay the beef checkoff. They take $1 per head sold. So if an animal is sold multiple times, let's say they're sold at weaning when they're going to the stalker operation, then from the stalker to the finisher, beef checkoff just made $2. Who knows what the beef checkoff is? Lobby. Yep. The big thing they do for us as a beef industry is lobby the government. Yep. Um, okay. $55 per head in feed cost, 8% operating capital interest. So I've also borrowed money to cover my operating costs. Any questions? This is just, most of this number is pulled out of thin air, but not too far out of the realm of possibility. I think interest rates are a little lower than that. Okay. Any questions? Okay. This is the printout for the new past Stalker planner. Okay. There's no real good place to move this. We'll just move it here for now. All right. Start date. Didn't update this from last year. Cattle cost per hundredweight. So that's the purchase price, dollars per hundredweight. Purchase weight, 600 pounds. Cattle cost, so this times this divided by 100. Okay. Days pastured, so we owned them for 150 days. Okay. We didn't borrow 100% of the money to purchase the animal, so this is equity in the head, so 67% of the purchase cost. Okay, this is our cattle interest rate. Pasture cost, that's the 70 cents. If I put a 0 here, it's on a cost per pound of gain basis. If I were to put a 1 here, it'd be dollar per hundredweight per month. Okay, but we're going to use dollar per gain, 70 cents. There's the medical cost, death loss percent. I didn't put anything for pickup and equipment, but you could put depreciation costs and things there, wear and tear, maintenance, etc. A management fee. So that would be like if I were paying someone to take care of the animals, right? Labor, 13 cents per head per day, dollar for the beef checkoff. Here I could put down money if I had some kind of marketing costs, whether that's hedging or livestock risk protection, which is an insurance. Okay, we'll talk more about that stuff later. Freight, so calculate how much your freight cost is. Usually it's somewhere $3 to $5 per loaded mile. So they don't charge you for deadheading, but $3 to $5 per loaded mile and about 50,000 pounds on a loaded truck, typically. So I didn't put anything there. There's that feed cost per head, and then our operating capital interest. So our total cost per head was $435. Okay. Here's where I entered projected daily gain. So it's calculating average daily gain. So 2.4 times 150. They put on 360 pounds of gain. Selling weight, 360 plus 600 is 960. Selling price per hundredweight, you adjust that based off expected value of gain down here. Won't have you guys do that. It's a little more complicated than just punching in a number. So this calculates the cost of gain. So 434.96 divided by 360. Okay. Feed only cost of gain. So feed only cost of gain would be much higher or a much larger percent of total cost of gain in a feedlot, right? But here in this stalker scenario, feed only cost of gain includes any feed costs and then pasture rent costs. Making sense? Okay. So it goes ahead and calculates our break-even selling price. So our break-even selling price is $247. Our selling price is $256. So our selling price is greater than our break-even selling price. So are we going to make money? Yes. Okay. So we made $94 per head under this scenario. Total profit. So you can put in here, you can put in the total number of head that you're running. So 200 times 93.7 is $18,741. Okay. All right. So this just breaks down how these things are calculated from the rest of these slides. 20 minutes. All right. So first, we need to determine the borrowed cap amount per head. So we have 500 times $3.20 per pound. That is $1,936. Okay. Minus $1,936 times 0.33. We have 33% equity in this example. So we borrowed $1,297.70. Okay. Next, we need to apply the interest rate. Okay. So we have 8% interest on a 360-day banker's year. Okay. So the amount of dollars borrowed times 0.08 times days that this should be 150, that we owned them, divided by 360. We didn't own them for a full year. Okay. So that is equal to $43.26. Okay. So if I give you the equation to make this calculation and this is blacked out, I ask you what's the value or what is item A here, would you be able to make that calculation? Make sense? Any questions? Okay. Death loss. Okay. So this is purchase cost plus medical cost plus any freight. So we need to multiply this cost that's being applied to that dead animal times our death loss percent. So 1.5 divided by 100. Okay. So in this example, $1,900 plus $28 plus $0 from freight times 0.015 is equal to $29.48. Okay. So the dead animals cost us $29.48 per head. Does that make sense? So if I give you this equation, purchase cost plus medical cost plus any freight times the percent, death loss, would you be able to calculate that? Okay. All right. Land cost, pasture cost. So we need to calculate dollar per pound of gain, which is 70 cents in our example, times average daily gain, times days. So in this example, it's $252 per head. Would you be able to calculate that? I hope so. Any questions so far? Okay. Then cost of gain. So it is the total cost, not including purchase price, divided by the total weight gain. So in this example, 434.96 cents divided by 360 because they gained 360 pounds. So that's $120 per hundredweight. There's our cost of gain there. Break-even sell price. So if I have this box blacked out, ask you to calculate that. It's operating cost or purchase price plus operating costs divided by sell weight. So in this instance, 600 plus 2.4 times 150. Okay. We multiply by 100 to make it on a dollar per hundredweight basis instead of a dollar per pound basis. So our break-even selling price was 247. Okay. So this would be an example of what I would give you on the exam. You'd have the equations and you'd make this calculation. Okay, make these calculations. So I would ask you, what is item A, B, C, D, E? So investment per head, F, G, H, I, J, K. Make sense? Okay. So I'm giving you guys equations because I don't think it does any value to memorize these types of things, but how to apply them is the important thing. Would it be beneficial if I gave you an example of this? I can give you an example from the previous test, last year's test, and you guys can work through it and ask me if you have any questions. Okay, I will put that online. Someone shoot me an email to remind me because I've already forgotten. Any questions? Okay. Okay. We have a little bit of time, so I'll go into these extra slides. They're just some fun examples I thought of. All right, so we can go here to these market news. All these are old numbers that I pulled out from last year. I just wanted to run through an example of we bought some cattle in Mississippi, owned them for a very short period of time, put groups of cattle together, took them to Oklahoma City, and then sold them. Would we make money, right? So these are just kind of rough ballpark numbers, okay? Here I'm assuming transportation cost is $3 per loaded mile, okay? Let's say we have a truck with 48,000 pounds of cattle, okay? We bought 600-pound animals, 80 head. We purchased them in Mississippi for $283 per head, or per hundredweight. Then we're going to ship them 600 miles to Oklahoma City National Stockyards, okay? So 600 times $3. So that costs us $1,800 in transportation costs, okay? Then let's say we can sell this same group of cattle for $290 per hundredweight. So purchase price, $257 times 48. That cost us $12,000 and $12,336. Okay. Sell price, 320. Where did I get that? I think this should have been 320 instead of 290. Okay. Mark that out, put 320 times that 4,800 or 4,800 weights. Okay. So I could sell them for 15,360. 15,360 minus our purchase minus 1,800, which was our transportation cost. So we just made $1,200 per head. Owned them for, you may take them to your operation, put together a group of like cattle that you bought from small stockyards, small auction markets in the Southeast. You may own for a week. You sell them, you made $1,200. I know people back home that do this So that's an 8.7% return on investment over about 2 to 3 days. Could you imagine the stress? Okay. Um, we've already done this. Okay. We've already looked at this and talked about these things, right? The differences in premiums based off of designation, typical versus fleshy versus all that other stuff. Bulls. Okay. This is a meme I saw circulating from last year, and it's honestly pretty exacerbated, right? They are much higher. So we're real happy about selling fat cattle, but we're purchasing these animals for about $4 per pound as feeder cattle, right? So I thought that was funny. Um, so just some rough numbers. If we sell a fed animal for 1,500 at 1,500 pounds, we're selling them $1.96 per pound on a live basis. Okay, we purchased them at 400 pounds, and they were purchased at $4 per pound. Okay, we added 1,100 pounds to these animals. Our value of gain is $121. Okay. Um, Here, I even said last year, most feed yards aren't buying 4 weights. That's probably not true anymore. A lot of feed yards are probably buying light cattle, growing them in the feed yard, have a long time on feed, over 300 days. We probably have a lot of cattle that are having their birthdays in a feed yard. Okay. Um, and they're doing that because feeder supply is so low. They're buying whatever they can get. Okay. Okay. Throughout class, we will take prices from AMS livestock mandatory reporting. Okay. So this is the live cattle dashboard. Kind of introduce this real quick. Maybe it's opening. Okay. All right. So here we have the weighted average. These are from mandatory price reporting from uh, uh, packing plants. Okay. Here is the dollars per hundredweight. This is on a live basis. You'll also see prices reported on a carcass basis. They'll be much higher, right? Typically, you can go from live base weight to carcass weight by dividing by dressing percent. Who knows what dressing percent is? Expressed as a percent of body weight, right? We're typically somewhere around 64%. So in a problem on a test or quiz, if I give you live basis and I give you dressing percent and I ask you to calculate it on a carcass basis, you could do that, right? So if I give you carcass basis price, let's say it's 300, say they dress 64%, 6.64 times that 300 would give me live price. Okay. Alrighty. This tells you how many groups of animals were slaughtered that week. So these are from all the packing plants. So right now, live basis, we're setting at $233 per hundredweight for fed cattle, live basis. Okay. Um, this tells you the typical premium based off yield, discount based off yield, a premium and discount based off weight, um, and then quality, premium and discount, average, right? So we'll go into the grid in subsequent lectures. Um, so on this dashboard, you can look at national versus this is the 5 area. So a lot of people, when they're setting their base prices for fed cattle, they'll base it off this 5 area price. This is Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. One thing you'll notice, packing plants in Colorado aren't paying as much as packing plants in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. Why might that be? Less competition. There's like 5 packing plants in around Amarillo compared to really one large one in northeast Colorado. Um, cool. Then the other thing we'll look at, Kansas State puts out a monthly focus on feedlot report. So this is the one from December last month. It's the average closeout of 6 different feed yards. Okay. They tell you in weight, final weight, average days on feed. So right now, the average days on feed for cattle in the high plains, I think they have feed yards from southwest Kansas, panhandle of Oklahoma, and then panhandle of Texas. Okay. Average of 6. Average in weight for steers was 820. Average final weight was 1,500 pounds, over 1,500 pounds. It's ridiculous. I think whenever I was in undergrad, it was closer to 1,300. Okay. Average daily gain was 3.75. Feed to gain. So how many pounds of feed did it take you to add a pound of gain for these cattle? Was 6.3. So it took 6.3 pounds of feed to add 1 pound of gain to these cattle in the feedlot. Average death loss was 1.52. Gives you the cost of gain there, $102 per hundredweight. Okay. This is total cost of gain, not feed only cost of gain. And then they project out the cost of gain for cattle if they were placed into the feed yard the month of December. And that is based off of solely corn price. Okay, we'll look at that later. So with this information, and we'll go into that math next Thursday, if I give you from this table cost of gain, total amount of weight gained, purchase price, and then the sell weight and sell price, you can calculate net profit from that. Does that make sense? So that will be in exam 1 as well. We'll go over that more next Thursday. I'm good if you guys are good. Okay. Any questions? Cool, guys. Get out of here. Graduate students, stay behind, please.